Mentioned this week's game against Kentucky, which obviously is a huge game at night. The team's going to be wearing the green decals, helmet stickers, calling attention to Mental Health Week, which is going on this week. We're in partnership with Helinski's Hope, and student athlete mental health has become a huge issue, and we deal with it day in and day out with our players, and certainly think it's more prevalent now than it's ever been before. So we'll acknowledge that with those decals. That'll be part of the uniform Saturday night. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Looking forward to playing a really physical Stoops team. Every time we play these guys, they're physical. When Coach Rick is here, it was physical. Kentucky, Georgia is just a physical football game because they brand their football behind that, and so do we. So I got a lot of respect for Coach Stoops and the program he's built and the job they've done.
Coach, I think you mentioned it after the game, but just to have 0 pre-snap penalties on the road in an environment like that, apart from just pumping crowd noise in during the week, what all goes into having success like that on the road?
Well, composure is a big part of it. I thought we would have some, and we simulated having some and getting backed up and not letting it spiral. So I thought Coach Bobo and his offensive staff did an incredible job. You take a quarterback who's never played on the road and start at Auburn and not have procedural penalties. You had good organization. You had good substitution patterns. You had good snap count variation, changing tempos. I thought they did a good job managing that, but that's not the issue now. I'm worried about Kentucky now, and they got a really good defense.
Kirby over here to your left. It's about their offense. What did Davis do when he saw 280 yards and 3 touchdowns? How much of that was him, and how much of that was his offensive line?
It's both. I mean, he's an exceptional back, as good a back as I've seen in a long time. This guy's smooth, explosive. He pass protects really well. He protects the ball. He's aggressive in the way he runs. It reminds me of Swift. He's just a little bigger, but he has a lot of the same cuts, one-cut runner, and they do a tremendous job now blocking for him. So it's not all him. I mean, he has a run game. I mean, it seems like Kentucky's always had a back, right? They had Benny or whatever, and he was unbelievable. Then they had the kid from Georgia the last couple of years. Their backs run really physical, but they are committed to running the ball, and they do a great job at the point of attack.
With that Kentucky defense, what stands out the most about how they attack and how they've been successful so far this year?
The variation they run, the defense they run is very unique. You don't play a lot of teams just like them. They have a lot of overhangs, what I call depth in the defense. They have people at the second level all over the place, so there's not a lot of free yards out there. They make you earn everything you get. They're massive up front. They have big people. They play 3-4 and 4-3, and the teams that play odd front, as they call it, they do a really good job of stopping the run game. These guys are really good at stopping the run. They're really physical, and they have a really good scheme. It's not easy to mimic.
Kirby, to your left, you referenced Carson starting his first SEC road game. There was always going to be sort of an unknown factor about him until you got through the season. What have you learned about him that maybe you didn't know before?
Most quarterbacks that start for the first time, you maybe don't know enough. I just feel like I had this relationship, and I knew Carson. I don't feel like I've learned a lot because I knew a lot. He had been in the system. Like, he had played. And he had not played in that environment. I'm not trying to exchange experience, but I'd been around the kid. He had been in the program. He had been in the offense. I'd seen him have good days on third down against our defense, have bad days. I'd seen him, make good decisions with the ball. He's really efficient. I guess the only thing I've learned is that he does have natural composure. I already thought that because that's the way he practices. But he doesn't get flustered very easily.
Kirby, how would you describe your team's offensive identity, and how much has that been affected by the running back's availability week to week?
Yeah, the offensive identity is do what it takes. I mean, that's essentially what it always comes down to, right? You'd love to have this defined that we're just going to bully you and run it through you. Nobody really does that. I don't know anybody that just does it. Now, Kentucky did it last week against Florida, but they haven't done it every single game that way. They've done it different ways. I don't think that any team has if you have one identity, then that's what they're probably going to try to stop. I think Kentucky's balance. When you look at the explosives right now in our league, they are like the only team that has – I think they have the exact same number of explosive runs as they have explosive passes. So they have this balance. Going back to us, I think our identity has been, we've been up and down in the red area. We've been pretty dang good on third down. We got a lot of things that we can work on. But as far as whether it's about the backs or not, we don't cry over what we don't have. You figure out what you got, and you figure out what you got, what they can do. So I'm not going to sit up here and complain about with the health or safety or how many backs we've got. That's not, we worry about what we do have, not what we don't.
Kirby, on the run defense, I know that QB run was so much of what Auburn was effective at, so it may not be applicable this week or in some weeks, but how much of a concern is it what they were able to do on the edges, and how much do you all need to work to get better at that?
Well, we got to do a better job. I actually felt better after I went and watched the tape. I think I was riding home on the bus in a state of depression about our ability to stop the run. And you sometimes as a coach, and my dad always said it, it's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. So when I got up and actually watched it, we struck blockers and played the run well at times. We didn't fit some plays well that they did and give them credit, and we probably didn't work some of those plays enough out of the formations they did it. They did a nice job scheming that up. So we got to do a better job of that. Make no mistake about it. But we have good run defenders.
Coach, I've heard you allude to Carson being extremely calm, and did that carry over at all to the rest of the team? Did you feel a sense of calm on the road this week?
I did feel a sense of calm, but I don't know if it came from him. I mean, it came from the game plan. The game plan, when you go into a place like that, like Coach Rick mentions, it's not easy there. Nobody understands that. I can't explain it. I've been there at LSU. I've been there at Alabama. I've been here as a player. Been there as an assistant coach. It's hard. It's just hard. It's hard on the road in the SEC, and it was hard Saturday. And the composure remained throughout the team, and that was part of the game plan.
Kirby, early in camp, you let us all know that you hadn't the defensive front wise. Didn't have as many disruptors as you've had in the past. How is that coming along? And then also, how good a bowler are you?
Oh man, let me answer that first. I don't have to put the little things on the guardrails. If he puts those on, I'm taking that belt home. I can assure you that. But I don't get to do those. My son Andrew always wants to put those up because it just provides an easy way to success. But I'll probably practice up some before it if I get some free time, so I don't embarrass myself. But what's that? I don't know what 100s is. I know Coach Rick can bowl because I've heard stories about scores. But what's funny is our players started going bowling when Nick and Sony and those guys were here. They would have a bowling group that played and did it all the time. Our players like to go on recruiting events, and as the players come back to the Letterman's event, they like bowling over golf. So more and more people enjoy it, and I know they'll be excited about it. As far as the defensive line part, I've never felt like we had a lot of the same defensive linemen this year that we had last year, outside of really Jalen, who didn't play most of the year. So I mean, we've got plenty of D linemen good enough to do things and execute. Just don't have disruptive people. So you have to find other ways to do things defensively to try to give people negative plays.
Yeah, you got Ladd and Kendall back on Saturday, but from a health standpoint, how much of it is still monitoring them and working their way back up to 100%?
Yeah, just that. I mean, we're really trying to get them in shape now because we feel like they're healthy. It's a matter of, okay, can they get in shape without wearing down their legs? You don't really get in shape in season. You're either in shape or you're not, and those guys haven't had a chance to have the stamina in practice. So we try to do it other ways, non-weight bearing, underwater running. You do all the things you can do, but we're trying to get them healthy and get them to the game and maybe get them some more snaps.
Kirby, I asked Tate earlier, when you look at Kentucky defensive line, you see big number 0. You kind of get Jordan Davis vibes when you look at him.
Yeah, extremely athletic for a large man. They do more with him probably than we did with Jordan. They don't play him at the 0 nose. They move him out to the 5 technique, the 4-eye. They dropped him against Florida in the interception play. I mean, it's unique as you'll see a human being 6'6", 350 dropping. And they mix it up with the guy. He was a talented player. We recruited him here. He's gotten better. He's a kind of a wrecking ball in there. He knocks people back.
Kirby, when we talked to Tate a few minutes ago, he was frustrated with the run blocking for himself and really the whole offensive line. What are you seeing just with the run blocking so far and the ways they need to improve going forward?
You got to help them. You got to help them in a lot of ways. Look, there's nobody. You can't tell me an offensive line right now that you say, "Oh man, they're just moving people and they're mashing people." Defensive linemen have leverage. They strike out of their hips. They come out. You got to find ways to get double teams. You got to find ways to run on perimeter. Running the ball in the SEC is the hardest thing to do. And Kentucky just did an unbelievable job of doing it. But outside of that performance, it's just not easy. And I can't pinpoint one thing that we can do better, but there's a lot of things we got to do better. And that's not just an offensive line job. You know, there's perimeter blocks, there's tight ends blocks, there's getting in the right run play, and there's the running back reads where they got to do the right thing too. It's shared responsibility, starting with me.
Realize, Coach, this is a little bit of a sensitive subject, but Ray Davis comes out of the transfer portal. You guys knew you were a little bit light in the running back. Did you guys ever have a discussion about Ray Davis or any other backs because of your situation at running back this year?
Not really. I don't remember anything on Ray. Somebody said something to me about that he might have expressed interest in. I never knew that. I never talked to Ray. I never had any conversation with him. And to be honest with you, we were in a situation where we had some backs coming back. We felt really good about Branson Kendall, Dejon, and the guys we had coming back. So, I mean, you're always looking for a better player, but we weren't actively pursuing anyone. And like I've told you before, most of these kids, when they go in the portal, they probably have an idea where they're going.
Going back to the film from Saturday, when you were looking at it on the bus, you see things you like, things you don't. Give me your evaluation of your guard play from this past Saturday.
It depends on what front they were in, Roddy. I mean, they have different fronts. I mean, you have a covered guard and you have an uncovered guard. We had some mistakes in there on a couple pass pros. We had some good plays. I mean, Auburn's defensive line played extremely hard, like every one of them will. They played with really good pad level and leverage and didn't give up movement, which every one of them will. So I think across the board, offensive line and our defensive line both have to play better, and that's essentially my assessment.
Kirby, you talked about the exceptional job Carson did first start on the road. Talk a little bit about Peyton and those massive kicks he made and sort of what the last month has been like for him and to come up big like that.
Yeah, a lot of confidence in Peyton. I think he is wired the right way. He was a baseball player. He pitched. When you have these kids that did multiple sports and they've had pressure on them in other environments, I'm a big believer in having to sit on that mound and throw strikes. I mean, I've been out there and know how hard it is to do it. So he's having to do that, kicking in front of 93,000 people, and that's not easy. And he's a true freshman. But he did a nice job going through his process, breathing, handling things well. And, I told him he's got 10 people out there with him, and he's got another 74 in the locker room that love him regardless of whether he makes it or not. It's unconditional love. And he has to know that and be able to relax and kick, and was very proud of him, the way he handled it.
What does it look like for Roderick Robinson to get back on Saturday?
He's still dealing with an ankle injury, so we'll see how he goes this week.
Kirby Smile was just named SEC Defensive Player of the Week. Where has he grown the most?
Probably in his leadership. He's been an incredible athlete, and he came in as a really good space player. He's gotten tougher. He's grown as a blitzer, and he's a quality leader. He's not afraid to confront guys when they're not doing things right, which you learn to appreciate as you coach longer, the guys that hold people to a standard so I don't have to.
Yeah, just having watched the tape, how would you assess how your inside linebacker group as a whole played, and maybe how not having a true disruptor type in that defensive line maybe impacts that position this year?
Yeah, I don't think that the defensive line impacts the inside linebacker position, not having a disruptor, because if you have people that strike blocks and occupy blocks, then it frees the linebackers up. Sometimes a disruptor is worse for an inside backer because the offensive line's free. But it's hot and cold. We've played good for a while. We've had a few busts, a few mental busts. We miskeyed a few things. They did a nice job of quarterback run misdirection. I mean, that's what people do now in football. They pull a guy here, take a guy here, and you got to figure out which way the play's going. So we did that well some, and we didn't do that well some. So we got to do a better job.
Kirby, concerning Ladd, how did he come out of the game Saturday? How did he feel after? And is that a situation with that injury? I know that there was he was fine and then he wasn't, then he couldn't go. Is that one of those things where you're kind of holding your breath a little bit week to week, for him to, just hoping that it doesn't crop back up, or do you guys kind of feel like you maybe have it under control a little bit now?
Yeah, no clue. I mean, we don't know if it's going to come back. I don't know. I know that the medical advice we got was to shut him down. We did that. He feels like he's recovered. He feels good. He had to progress last week to the point of full speed. Didn't bother him. So I was pleased with that part of it. He wants to be out there. The biggest thing now for him is the conditioning level and all.
You took Lawson Lucky and Pierce Berlin on the road with you last week. Could they have played?
Could they have played? Yeah, they could have played. I mean, well, if they're better than Oscar and Brock, I mean, I don't know what you want us to do. Y'all want to take Brock Bowers out and put one of them in? Anybody voting on that? I mean, if you vote that, then you're not a coach. So, but yeah, they're cleared. They're not where they need to be physically and mentally to play SEC play. They're trying to get there. But I mean, guys, this is a grown man sport. To put a true freshman out there just because you guys had him as a 4 or 5 star, it doesn't mean he's ready. I mean, it's physical out there, and it's grown man football when you watch what's going on out there. And those guys they're getting better, they're getting closer. But you don't. How many freshmen did we play the other day? I don't know. A kicker, a linebacker. I can't think of many others.
Kirby, the end of the first half, could you elaborate on that 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1? I think they were lined up in pistol in both of those. Did you anticipate that? And can you talk about the plays your guys made? I mean, a lot's been made about the yards rushed for, but that run defense stop there seemed pretty pivotal at that moment.
It was a big moment. We do an intensive study every week on short yardage goal line plays. I think they're deciding games more often because teams are going for it more often. And what I've learned, I watch a reel every week that is every 3rd and 1 in the SEC and every 4th and 1 in the SEC. It is hard to get a yard. You guys all think, well, you ought to be 100%. Go watch that reel. Go watch that reel and see how hard it is to get a yard. Talk about the guards. Talk about the offensive line not getting pushed. Go watch every team in our league on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. It is hard to get a yard because people are defending those down and distances different than they ever have. I mean, they're just treating them different. So I was proud of our defense for stopping them in those. It probably had a little bit to do with us, had a little bit to do with them. They didn't get a great front they wanted. They had a little trouble with the exchange on one of those, and Chaz got some knockback, and we cleaned it up well. But I don't want to be in 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, to be honest with you.
Take 2 more questions.
Coach, we obviously all know how good Bowers is with the ball in his hands, but I feel like every week I see him 12 yards downfield burying somebody. Can you just talk about how good of a blocker he's become throughout his career?
Yeah, most underrated part of his game. Just turn off the catches and go watch this dude block, because he tries to put him in the ground. He has an extreme amount of power in his core, in his he centers. He gets his feet on people and runs his feet, and he's a really powerful weapon as a blocker too.
You talked about being physically and mentally prepared with the tight end group. Oscar Delp makes a big mistake. How important was his composure and his bounce back from that moment?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, it's like I said, it's not Oscar's fumble, it's our team. And our team, there were 74 men on a mission, and we were going to be there for each other no matter what happened. And we weren't going to win the game without Oscar the rest of the way. So we got to protect the ball to get where we want to go, but we got to love each other regardless. I want to thank again Coach Rick and Miss Catherine for being here, and all they've done for the Athens community, and what they're doing with this event should make a lot of people proud of UGA and what it stands for. So thanks again, and go Dogs.